You might not know this, but January happens to be Human Trafficking Awareness Month. One of the biggest myths, it's not happening here. That's just not true. Charlotte has ranked 8th highest in the nation for the number of human trafficking cases. Take a look at some of the numbers we have. Here in North Carolina, 854 calls with 221 cases reported back in 2017. In South Carolina, 387 calls with 118 cases reported. Human trafficking victims can be, of course, any age, any race, gender, nationality. They can also come from any socioeconomic group to dispel all the stereotypes that might come with it. Tammy, this is sort of your cause. Explain to us the setup here. So many people don't realize the problem that it is. It's one of those hidden problems to a lot of people.
Very true. And, thank you for having me to speak about this because, you said the numbers, and those come primarily through Polaris, 1-800 number calls that victims will call themselves, or others who see something troubling going on will call Polaris to show. And that's how we determine the prevalence for trafficking in our state. So, but what we need to remember are those numbers are completely underrepresenting the realities of trafficking in our area. I mean, most people don't know trafficking when they see it.
I was going to say, explain to people what it is. I mean, I think we all have a broad idea of what it is, but you're on the ground seeing it up close. What is it exactly?
So, I mean, it's different than what Hollywood sensationalizes it to be, right? Hollywood sensationalizes it to be, a girl walking down the road, thrown into a trunk, taken to Mexico. Yep. She's trafficked on the streets of Mexico. And I'm not saying that those situations don't happen, but more than likely, a young girl is going to be lured into the world of trafficking. So if you think of some need that's not being met, whether it's food security, housing, maybe just that need for being loved. Maybe
the basics that we all need.
Exactly. A perpetrator will feed upon that, fill her need, and she'll go, quote unquote, willingly into the world of trafficking. Now she owes him for something. So she owes him for the food that he's providing, now probably the drugs that he's giving her to stay. So now there's pictures and there's movies, and then there's seeing maybe stripping, and then there's the sleeping with men to pay back what she owes. So most victims of trafficking aren't going to know to call a 1-800 line to be rescued because they see themselves as, this is the life I've chosen, this is the life that I deserve. And so
they don't see themselves as victims.
They do not see themselves as victims. So, when we are in the public and we're on airports or transit stations or just at the mall and we see things that just don't look right,
what does that look like, though? What doesn't look like? I mean,
maybe a girl who's just dressed improperly for the situation that she's in, right? Maybe she's just doesn't look like she's been washed or clothed properly lately. Maybe she's malnourished. Another thing that perpetrators will do is brand their victims. So a lot of tattoos to show that she belongs to someone. So, I mean, I know that if you're seeing this girl in the restroom, you might want to strike up a conversation with her, but the safest thing to usually do is call 911, give a description of the girl and the person that she's with. And perpetrators can be men or women. Women do sell other girls for profit. So don't just write off a situation if you see two girls together. If it just seems troubling, Polaris also has a text Be Free. You can text that as well, give them the information, and they'll match law enforcement. But
where is this happening in Charlotte?
I mean, it happens on social media. It happens at our transit stations. It happens, I don't want to just pinpoint one area as the place where trafficking happens. I think just making our children aware and being our sisters and brothers keepers to say, hey, if you're talking to someone online who is 18 or 21 and you're 12, that's not an appropriate relationship. And let's start teaching our children that a little earlier.
This is something that the city has had to start grappling with more in the last 10 years. I know as just a news department, this is something we're having to cover more than we ever thought. It was one of those hidden problems for the longest time.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what the city with CMPD has, the change in approach has been going after the consumers and not the victims. And then it's sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We just had to change our local ordinance, our hotel motel ordinance, because of a Supreme Court decision. Previously, CMPD could go to some of the motels that they know are problem motels for sex trafficking, and they could look at the registry of the hotel or motel, especially if they were looking for someone in particular. And we've just had to rewrite that ordinance because it's no longer allowed because of a Supreme Court override.
And Ben, we got some action, or had action going on in the General Assembly. Representative Bill Brawley was a true advocate of this. Yeah, he's no longer or currently serving in the House with the third gavel, but this man lived this. He wants to protect these young women. He wants to go after these solicitors. That's the goal. And once we get teeth in the General Assembly, that becomes policy, that becomes law in this state, that's where we're going to see support for groups like yours that can really go after these traffickers.
Talking to police, what is their biggest impediment as far as catching these people?
Well, getting the information on the supply side. So who the consumers, Tammy alluded to it, when we have sporting events here in town, it brings in a lot of consumers for this. And that's really challenging.
All right, well, if you are a victim or you know somebody who happens to be a victim of human trafficking, call the number here on your screen. It's 1-888-373-7888. More Flashpoint after this.